Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a Baller.
Welcome back. Wednesday, November 18th. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Jason Moore.
Welcome in, fellas. The playoffs are on the horizon. How are we looking at our Dynasty leagues? Anybody making the playoffs this year?
What? Anybody making the playoffs this year?
I mean, Kyle's not. Kyle hasn't been to the playoffs in years.
That's true. He doesn't know what that feels like. Yeah, in our main Dynasty league, Mike and I are facing off, and I'm pretty sure whoever wins, I guess it depends on median, he could still retain the number one seed, but we're fighting for that. Yeah, I don't know if he's on the microphone. Hopefully not. Papa Josh, who's producing today, are you had such a good Dynasty team. Is your team in the playoffs? Oh, he's not on the microphone, he says. Let me answer for him. No, he's not. What a loser.
Does he just not care or what?
Ironically, this is me last year. Like I got a very good team, and I didn't make the playoffs last year.
It's usually the best course of action when you talk a big game before the season about how awesome your team's going to be. And yeah, Josh
No one is sad for you, Papa Josh.
Oh, not at all.
No one.
No. I hope that he will never figure out how to talk on a mic on this podcast.
Yeah. But
let us not forget, Jeremy and I do have a pretty good team in the main Ballers Dynasty League.
Yes.
And so we just need to hold on. We just need Puka and JSN to just carry us finish line, because we've had a ton of injuries recently. But yeah, in Dino Jr., the league that the three of us are all in, I hate that I won this past week, but I have Josh Allen, and so he made me win.
I won by, I think it was like 0.05 or something. I was like, dang it, because Kyle and I are in full rebuild, and I prefer to lose. But hey, when you got Drake May, I mean,
Mike and I's team of destiny and Dino Jr., we won again, and we are barely taping it together. We have lost Tyreek Hill, Joe Burrow, Mike Evans, J.K. Dobbins, Kyler Murray, Michael Penix. We're barely holding.
You know who you got? Matthew Stafford.
I do know. Yeah, Matthew Stafford. Thank you, Betz. We
made a little
trade.
Deadline deal.
We lost all our quarterbacks. We lost 3 quarterbacks.
You guys made a trade?
I've
tried to trade with you, both of you. I tried to trade with you, Jason, for a while. Nothing. No response. By the way, both of you guys, Mike and I had to hold it down last week on this podcast because both of you guys almost died.
That is true.
Jason almost died because of the meat, the beef sweats. I have kids that have been sick for about 10 days in a row now. Like, you guys know with like little kids, of course, if you're in school or anything, it's like there's a wave of like, you're sick, you get a little bit better, you go back to school, you get more sick, and it kind of is like this cycle. So it's been making our way through our house for probably 10 days now, and the twins yesterday just spiked another fever. So we're on round 2 of that. So yes, apologies for missing last week. It was a rough week in the Betz household, but hopefully we're on the mend soon.
We did get to talk through a lot of trades this past week, and the trade analyzer, which is live on the website, fantasyfootballers.com, we are bringing that to the app. That is something this week that our team is hard at work. So if you're in the Fantasy Footballers app, you're looking at your teams, you're looking at your roster suggestions, optimizing that way. The trade analyzer will soon be in the app, which will be fun for a lot of people, especially in Dynasty Leagues this offseason when you're trying to make deals. But on this episode, we're going to play a little Regress or Impress. I'm going to list some players that have been doing pretty well recently. A lot of them had a great week 11, and we're going to ask the question, what do you do in Dynasty? Because there are some variables at play. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But before we do that, let's rewind the film.
Weekly Rewind.
Every week, we rewind the film and do a deep dive on a certain player. And I feel like the player, I'm going to go first. I usually always go last. But I'm going to go first because I think this might be one of the most talked about players. I know Andy and I talked about him. I know, Jason, you talked with Andy about this player. And part of it is because Jameson Williams is having a resurgence. the last 3 weeks. I think before we get into the film from this past week, which they lost to the Eagles, I don't think any of us ever questioned his talent, right? Like, can he be good at football? Where there's other players, I think we're like, oh man, they don't earn targets, they're not good. It was always a weird thing with his utilization. That was the biggest issue.
I will say I question a smidge of his talent when it comes to just wide receiver skills, in and out of breaks. Like, I think he feels like a little bit of a gadget player. Like, obviously I don't question his athleticism, his ability to just like, if you can get him the ball with any kind of space, watch out. I don't know if he were to go and sign a big contract of free agency to be a team's wide receiver 1, if he could be a 140 target player.
That's worth. I get that. And the only other player I can think of as like, this is a unicorn, the way that they're used, I don't know if it would translate. Like, would Rashee Rice be a wide receiver 1 on a different team?
No, that's a great, totally different style of player, but same situation where it's like his skill set is being used perfectly by the team, and that's what makes it work. If he were to go to, swap the Cardinals' Marvin Harrison with Rashee Rice, is he any better?
I mean, he'll get a better quarterback, that's for sure.
I mean, Michael Wilson's the wide receiver 1 there, so let's be honest.
So with Jameson, the biggest issue was just the route tree was, hey, run a go route. And the comments I would get from people all the time is, oh, he's just there to do a clear out route for Amon-Ra. You don't get really good players that you pay in the offseason that are first round picks to be clear out guys. Like, those are the players on your roster that you're just going to get to just run those all the time. Like, that's what Dante Thornton Jr. is for the Raiders. If you ever watched his routes, like, hey, dude, go run because we're trying to hit somebody else underneath. But Jameson Williams, he is tied for the highest percentage of crossing routes in the NFL. So it's about 21% of his routes is these kind of mid-crossing routes or these shallow crosses. And over the last 3 weeks, they have been incredible. He's been targeted on 38% of them. His yards per route run the last 3 weeks on these crossers is 8.31. It's just like off the charts.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you don't know what a standard good number is on that, it's about a quarter of that. So, yeah. Wow.
So he's a unicorn, I think, usage-wise. So that's like the problem that I think I have projecting forward, because we can look at these last 3 weeks and say, Dan Campbell pounded the table and said, I'm going to do this myself. Like, I'm going to make sure that we involve this player. And I don't know what John Morton's doing anymore, by the way. It's just like he's got to feel like such a beta compared to Dan Campbell.
He's helping in practice. You know what I mean? Coming up with some good ideas, and then Dan Campbell's going to, call the ones he likes.
I love, like in especially the primetime games when the OC or the DC sits up in the booth and they have the camera like kind of like under their chin, like at the desk they're working at. And it's usually not a very flattering angle of a person. On Sunday Night Football, they, at the beginning of the game, we're like, here's John Morton, the OC, like he's orchestrated, such and such as of this offense. But in the last couple of weeks, they have had Dan Campbell calling the plays. And then the camera just like shot away. And it's like, he basically just told everybody, this guy lost his job, kind of, or lost his responsibilities anyway. And then they just moved on. But yeah, I mean, look, Dan Campbell clearly was not thrilled with kind of how I think Jameson Williams in particular was being used. Because if you look at like the first 5-6 weeks, his average depth of target was like 20 plus yards down the field. It's like, if you're going to catch a long bomb for fantasy, we'll be happy about that. Otherwise, he's pretty much just running sprints out there. And Dan Campbell understands, like, this guy is way too talented of a weapon to do that with him. Like, he needs the ball in space, get him moving, and get him on those crossers. Like you said, it's literally unstoppable. So, yeah, I mean, what you've seen in the last couple of weeks, Dan Campbell is super, super encouraging. And I did want to highlight when you talked about you don't pay this guy this much to be just a wind sprint guy. He is being paid like a top 20 NFL wide receiver in terms of average salary. So they are putting a lot of resources into Jameson Williams. The way he was being used in the first, month plus just didn't make any sense.
I feel like John Morton is like pushed aside. Like, he's basically like LeFou to like Dan Campbell being Gaston. and he's just like here for the hype man, just like out of the way. So I want to ask this question dynasty-wise, because Jameson Williams has been really, really great recently. He's recouped a lot of value where for a while we're like, oh man, is this how they're going to use him? So between these three former Alabama first-round wide receivers, who would you rather have in dynasty?
Okay.
Jalen Waddle, who's 27 years old, Devonta Smith, who's 27 years old, or Jameson Williams, who is 24.6. All three of these players are paid.
I would put Jameson at the end of that group, personally. I think that I don't trust the fact that it seems like we require Jameson Williams to get a very specific utilization. You know, it took a long time into his career before he had his breakout. I know the talent, I know the athleticism, but I think that the other two players are better wide receivers. They're older, so you can make that argument in a startup if you wanted to take a shot at a younger guy. But I trust, like I would go Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, and then JMO.
Yeah, it's interesting because the other two players here may have some situation changes around them. Like obviously Tyreek Hill's injury was devastating. We're not really expecting him back this year. So Waddle should have the wide receiver one role moving forward, but what does the offense look like and does that change? There's been a lot of talk about their head coach coming back regardless of the results this year, which would be really encouraging for Waddle, so that would be huge. The A.J. Brown stuff in Philly is just kind of annoying at this point, and nobody stops talking about it, but there is a world that they move on.
Ship him out.
There is a world
Ship him out.
where he moves on, and then Devonta
I would
Smith
love that world.
is the dude. And then Jameson, it seems stable, I would say, for the next 2-3 years, which you couldn't necessarily say for the other guys. So it's tough because I think Waddle and Smith are better true NFL wide receivers. I think Jameson Williams has a massive ceiling if he would put it all together and it would continue. So I think I would go Waddle, JMO, Smitty. I think.
I can't ever even bottle up my love for Devonta Smith. It's not. He is so
do you love
good.
him, Betz, though? You put him third.
You're right. Put him first. What am I saying?
No, I think that's the Eagles fan in him that's just kind of reeling from their offensive showing, even though you're winning all these games and your defense is historically good. But yeah, Devonta Smith, if he got the opportunity to be the one on a team, he would absolutely succeed.
Yeah, give me Smith, Waddle, JMO. The problem with JMO that I was given all the good stuff. He just doesn't run the type of like gimme routes. Like he doesn't run slants really at all. In the last 3 weeks, it's been 0% of his routes. And a lot of the technical stuff is just still not a part of his route tree. So you will get these huge crossing plays. And they're really fun because when they hit, he can do the yards after the catch thing. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to still have the ups and downs. Although, let's be honest, Smith had one catch this past week.
Well,
so,
Jalen Hurts completed like 12 passes. So there's that.
And they won a football game from it. So, Betz, who you got?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight RJ Harvey just because it was our first look at him in the lead role without J.K. Dobbins, which, man, Dobbins, dude, it stinks. Like, he's so talented and he's played well this year. It's just a bummer that, again, he's done for the year with that Liz Frank injury. But we saw Harvey get the vast majority of the snaps, which obviously there was concern is like, how much does he play? You know, Sean Payton loves his committee guys, all that stuff. I would say the first look at him in this situation, I mean, you do need to highlight, like, the matchup was not great against the Chiefs, was fine. Like, nothing special about kind of when he touched the ball, nothing crazy happened. He did have some nice receptions and some yards after the catch. As a runner, it was kind of a tough go. He was dead last among qualified runners this week, according to Next Gen Stats and rushing yards over expected per attempt. He had a 27% success rate, which is pretty abysmal. That's a 1 week sample. It's the Chiefs, you know, all that stuff. So I'm not saying it's panic mode, but I would say overall it was fine. I wasn't blown away. It wasn't incredible, but the usage is super encouraging. The tricky thing is, I don't know what to think about this offense week to week. Like, Bo Nix has been wildly inconsistent. They have these wild come from behind wins. They also have games where he looks kind of bad, you know? So I think there's going to be a lot of ups and downs with Harvey for the rest of the season. The annoying thing was, like, Jaleel McLaughlin got a friggin' goal line carry. Jaleel McLaughlin's been inactive the entire season for the most part. So you never know what you're going to get from Sean Payton, but at least, like, the underlying usage, snap rate, share of the touches, all that stuff was there. Let's hope he can grow on it in better matchups here moving forward.
Did the film look like? I mean, I know all the rushing rate over expectation, but I don't think they factor into over and under expectation matchup within the expectation. It's just like down and distance and situation,
Sure.
I believe. In which case, the expectation might be that when there's Chris Jones in your face, that you don't gain yards. So what did that look like? Was it Kansas City or was it the Broncos? Like, which one was the reason why he sucked?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, Kansas City played well in rush defense in this game. When Harvey touched the ball, like especially on his rush attempts, he didn't look to me like a special player that they couldn't have somebody else in there doing the exact same thing he did. It's one game, so we'll see. But I would say overall, I wasn't super impressed.
Okay.
In college, his calling card was, these big plays in space, and I know that he led the entire class, so even above Genty in yards before context. He had a good offensive line. He still has a good offensive line here. So he just needs plays in space, and I think we've kind of seen that with Henderson, Travion Henderson, where it's like, hey, these between the tackle things, you're going to have to be able to do that in the NFL, but eventually one of these big plays are going to break in the run game. So I think it's just nice that he saw a lot of the early down stuff. It's going to be fine over time.
All right. My guy that I took a look at was another rookie running back, Woody Marks. He is getting the utilization. He's on the field for more and more of the snaps. They are phasing out Nick Chubb, and they're saying, let's see what we have in Woody Marks. The last 2 weeks, 14 carries. This past week, 18 carries. In a win against a bad team in Tennessee where he did absolutely nothing. Just 18 carries for 44 yards, 1 catch for 7 yards. And I just wanted to see why. Is it him? Is it the offensive line? And I think when I went back and I watched, Andy just traded for him in a dynasty league where he's a rebuild. So he's a rookie. Maybe he'll get play next year, but I also think there's a chance that he just doesn't. And he vanishes and goes away, just like a la Dameon Pierce. And when I watched the film, I thought he was slightly above average, just slightly. The offensive line didn't do any help, and really the Tennessee rush defense, which usually is not this incredible rush defense, they didn't seem to be like going after the quarterback and expose. It just felt like there was always almost an extra defender, if not in the box, coming up, so quick that he didn't do much. He would run through some arm tackles and fall forward for a yard or two here or there. The vision was mediocre. And I wonder how much of this is Davis Mills at quarterback, CJ Stroud on the pine, dealing with the concussion protocol. And so it's just a change of game plan where it's like, hey, let's just kind of stack the box, see if they can move the ball at all. He was running into a lot of defenders every play, never felt like he had a ton of space. He would push through an arm tackle here or there. But I think what my takeaway is I really want to see the next game with CJ Stroud against an average defense to see if maybe some of those lanes open up. He had some juice to him. I'm never going to really buy into long-term value of a 4th-round pick,
right?
Retaining it unless they Bucky Irving, unless they do something like what Scadaboo was doing this year. And certainly, even if the rest of the year Woody does good stuff and is getting 18 carries a game and has better success with CJ Stroud in there, I will not be buying into him as a difference maker that the team is going to be so invested in because he had a good rookie year. So I'm mostly pretty mid on him.
I think that's been my takeaway. He has been getting all the stuff inside the 10 the last couple of weeks. So it's like, okay, they're getting opportunity. They've been really bad in the red zone all year long. But I traded him away last week in a dynasty league, because someone else really needed running back help. They wanted a young running back. And I'm just looking at who he is and I go, I bet he's not the long-term answer for this team. I'm betting on it. So I sent away Woody Marks and Nico Collins. and I got Drake London because I wanted to get younger at wide receiver, and I put Drake London in that, second tier right below the top guys.
Yeah, if you are a rebuilding team, then my view of Woody Marks, even though he's a rookie, is he's not going to help you at all. He almost is more helpful for a team that's trying to compete now, maybe with some running back issues, because he is going to be the guy rest of season. I think that, it's ironic because the most recent comp where we've seen a rookie come out, have success, who's a 4th-round draft pick, and then they completely just, deleted him, was the Texans with Dameon Pierce, and then they're like, yeah, but we're going to go get Joe Mixon. And so I think this team has, and it worked. It made them so much better. And so I do expect them to do that again. So if I had Woody Marks in a league, and he is not really helping me right now, I think his trade value to someone else is probably higher than his future value to you.
Yeah, real quick, last point on Marks before we move on. I did just want to highlight kind of what Jason was saying. He ran in between the tackles on 83% of his carries last week, and the Titans have been a terrible run defense in general. They've also had pretty big issues on the defensive line from an injury perspective. They got Jeffrey Simmons back this week, which makes a huge difference. He had a 22% success rate, which is abysmal. So
doo-doo.
Yeah, so I agree. It was kind of meh overall, and I share the same, kind of takes you guys have. Like, we need to remember, even in like prospect season, this guy kind of had a lot of overall issues in his profile and totality. And I do think he's one of those guys that it sort of sounds weird because he's a rookie, but he doesn't really fit like a guy that I'm tying myself to for next year because of the draft capital concerns and some of the overall play we've seen, which it's been fine up and down, but definitely not a guy that they're, in my opinion, going to circle and say, we got to get that guy the ball next year.
With late round running backs like this, like late as in a day 3 pick, it's like you have to thread a needle to find the right situation on a team. Like Chase Brown, the way that he was able to do it the last couple of years is their defense sucked. So they get all this opportunities for all these shootouts where it's like the Texans, it's like you really need to thread the needle with a bad offensive line to get carries inside the 10 and be the guy, and hopefully you're the guy next year.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a great bet to make. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, we're going to look at a couple of players who in week 11 had some big performances, then kind of ask the question, moving forward, are they going to regress or impress?
That don't impress me much.
So this is where a lot of the redraft stuff that you guys talk about, Jason, on the main show bleeds into Dynasty. It's like we're not playing a completely separate game here when we talk about Dynasty. Like week in, week out, we are still making lineup decisions. We're still looking at matchups, and we're still asking the questions, right?
You don't win a 2020s championship. Like that's not just because it's a Dynasty. That's not an award that you get in your Dynasty league. You win a championship on a yearly basis, 2025. You have to do the exact same thing you do in a redraft in any Dynasty league if you want to be the champion. And that's score the most points to get in the playoffs and then be the best team for 3 weeks. Redraft 100% is a huge part of Dynasty.
Yeah. And so the player that I want to bring up first is Nico Collins, because for the first 6 games of the season with CJ Stroud, would you guys say it was disappointing?
Oh, yeah.
Big
yeah.
time.
I mean, not only disappointing emotionally and mentally, but if you look at the lists of draft picks that were on the greatest number of losing teams, Nico was one of the players on the highest percentage of teams that wasn't an outright injury.
So in other words, the people that had Nico, bunch of losers.
Bunch of losers. That's right.
Just if you were hanging out with Nico Collins for the first month and a half of the season, losers. No,
Yeah.
no
Just
shot.
what a dumb loser.
So he had a
Not a winner.
24%. just people you don't want to hang out with. 24% target share, 57 receiving yards per game. It was, it was fine, but not what you expected of like, this is an alpha for my team. This is a rock. The last 3 weeks with Davis Mills. Davis Mills came in that first game when Stroud got knocked out, but a 29% target share, over 100 receiving yards per game, and 16.6 fantasy points per game. The Texans play on Thursday night. It's against the Bills. That'll be a fun Thursday night game. But the question is, like, why does a player who is seen across the league, obviously the Texans think of him as an alpha, why is there a disconnect between those? And why is there a disconnect league-wide when, like, backup quarterbacks come in and just crush for fantasy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of it is. So I see a little bit of correlation between the Kyler situation and the Stroud situation, which is neither Kyler nor Stroud were playing their own best football that we've seen. And both of them were kind of doing the same thing where when the offensive line was struggling, they were rattled. They would drop their eyes. They would, start getting on the move, and it really hurt their offenses. Then Brissett comes in, and he just stands there and takes a walloping, a beating. He's got the same bad offensive line, but it's like, this is my only opportunity to show it, so I'm going to stand tough in here and deliver the ball across the middle of the field, and it works. And so I think there's some of that going on in both situations. My hope is that, when Stroud comes back, maybe he will learn a bit from being on the sidelines for a couple of weeks. We've seen that happen with other quarterbacks, other young quarterbacks. We saw that happen with Bryce Young when he got benched. I mean, obviously this is an injury, but you take some time, you watch some football, and then you get ready for your chance again, and you come back in and you play a little better. I'm hopeful there. With or without that, though, I do think Nico Collins is going to be much better the second half of the year. Not because of Davis Mills by any means. I'm assuming Stroud will be back not this week, but next week. And if he is, then I'm still in on Nico Collins from both a redraft and a dynasty perspective. He just got paid. He's 26 years old. I'm not worried at all about Nico.
Yeah, I agree. And if you guys remember in the first month or so, there was a lot of discussion, and even some of the Houston beat reporters were asking Nick Haley, why isn't Nico being put in motion? Why aren't you guys using him in different formations? And he was kind of defensive. He was like, I don't know, he gave some answer. It was like, well, we are. And it's like, the stats would say otherwise. I haven't looked at the most 3 recent weeks of this. I'm not sure if it's changed at all or not, but I do think there's something to be said as well about the offense in general. Stroud learning a new system with Haley, Stroud being responsible remember, this was the first year they gave him control at the line of scrimmage. I'm not sure how much that plays into his performance or not, but you talk about the offensive line struggling, basically all new starters on the line, right? For the most part. So they needed time to kind of gel and get going here. So maybe there's some of that too, where the back half of the season, the offensive line can at least be functional. Nobody's expecting them to be the top 10, but just be functional and give those guys a chance back there. So yeah, we'll see. I'm with you guys though. Very into Nico, both short and long term. He's only 26 years old, so he's still in his prime. They just paid him, like Jason said. So both redraft and dynasty, still very in on Nico.
Does the ceiling feel a little bit lower than it did going into the season? In terms of this dude could be the wide receiver one on a season.
Yes, because that was when you talk about what is the ceiling outcome going into the year, it was Nico as one of those players, and there were probably only 6 guys that you were range of outcomes is the number 1 wide receiver. And that range of outcomes would have included the Houston Texans taking a step forward with a young quarterback on offense and surprising us with the changes that they made in the offensive line. Some of the changes were expected to be bad, but you hope, and we've seen examples in the past where this offensive line, they got rid of some starters, and so you're like, oh, it's going to be even worse. But then it's no, those starters sucked, and their starters did suck. But guess what? The new guys suck worse. The offensive line is too bad to allow for Nico to be the wide receiver 1, and their defense is too good to allow Nico to be their wide receiver 1. They are winning and playing in games that have very few points scored total. So, but what Nico has shown on film recently, and even in some games with Stroud, is he's still that alpha dude. As a wide receiver, as just a manimal out there, I've got no concerns with him. I have concerns with the system around him from a ceiling outcome.
I was thinking about offensive lines, and the thought that we usually have with quarterbacks is man, there are only about 20 to 25 people on the planet who can be like a really good NFL quarterback at time. I'm starting to think about offensive line and how, like, man, if there's 5 spots per team, I feel like it doesn't feel like there's enough to go around as is. And
No
then,
way.
And like you watch the Raiders game, we watch Raiders and Cowboys. You're like, I feel like they like didn't think to like bolster their offensive line for the year. And now they're like, well, we just have dudes here that don't know what they're doing. Like one of their rookie guards, they actually like came out and said like he didn't know what he was doing in practice, so we could not put him out there. They came out and said that. So I feel that with the Texans, and I feel that with the overall ceiling. Collins we had as the wide receiver 8 in Dynasty going into this season. He feels like he's a little bit lower because we've had some players maybe like surpass him. Like for instance, I mentioned Drake London. I'd rather have Drake London in Dynasty, and that's why I made that trade. Do you feel like he's still a top 12 wide receiver in Dynasty?
I think he's on the fringe. I think he's right there.
Okay, so I'll give you some names that are kind of around that wide receiver 12 range in Dynasty. Would you rather have Nico Collins or Ladd McConkey?
Nico.
I think Nico.
But what does your heart want, Jason?
I love Ladd, but they're
love
going
Ladd so
to
much.
spread that ball out so much there. And even though he is younger and he's got a better quarterback, there's definite concern as to whether he can be the one there, the number one, a true dominant 1,500-yard a season guy. I think he's got the talent to do so, but I don't know that his situation will allow it.
All right, what about Rome Odunze?
That one is so interesting to me because I feel a lot of recency bias here.
Because you traded for him?
I think there is some of that, so a little bit of recency bias, a little bit of personal bias. I just traded for him in a keeper league, and then he goes out and puts up just a dud of duds, and he has not been getting it done. There another situation where he could spread the ball around with whether it's Loveland coming on or Burden or DJ Moore. I think I'm more confident in Nico than in Rome, but that's hard when the age gap is there. Rome is so young, tied to a young quarterback, a good offensive system and mind. That one I'm going to let you two. I feel like I've got to recuse myself here. I'm too close. Like I'm the judge that's like, that's my baby boy.
Yeah, I think Nico is just a better player, like straight up. But I think the situation for Rome with, the upside of Caleb and Ben Johnson is clearly better than what's the situation in Houston. I always lean talent at wide receiver and just hope it works out. And so for that reason, I would kind of side with Nico, but I get the argument for Rome for sure.
That's a 3-year age gap, which if we look at Nico, think of the contract extension that he signed the year before. We're saying that Nico has 2 to 3 more years of having really good to elite production. Rome, you look at it and you go, what if he has 6 or even more?
Yeah, I mean, this gets into the conversation we have often on the show, which is kind of who do you want more in Dynasty right now versus who would I take in a startup? In a startup draft where I'm really trying to build a foundation for a long-term future, I don't know if I'm going to be competing or not when I'm in the draft. I don't know at the end of this, am I going to have happened to draft some of these older veteran guys who are going to be awesome this year, or did I end up going more young and youthful? I will err in the early rounds on a young core. And so I think if I was in a startup, I'd probably take Rome first.
That makes sense. I'm going to throw in one more wild card name just because it's fun. And I realized that I put them in the same tier when I did the midseason ranks, but Nico Collins or George Pickens in Dynasty. George Pickens is 2 years younger than him.
Asking us this right after.
George Pickens is 2 years young. Wait, George Pickens is 24?
Yep, 24.7.
Is that young or did you think he's older?
No, I thought he would be closer to Nico's age.
Oh yeah.
No,
I thought he'd be
was
25.
Super young when he came into the league.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Man.
I'm going to be on the Nico side there. Nico is paid already to be an alpha and is the alpha for his team. The hope if you have George Pickens, I believe, is that he gets franchised.
He could be a yacht. Not just a boat.
Right.
He could be a yacht.
I think you hope he gets franchised. My fear with Pickens, I mean, this is a guy, George Pickens is one of my 3 my guys this year. I obviously loved George Pickens coming into this season. I thought the situation with Dak and with CeeDee is perfection for his skill set. And if I knew for sure that he was going to be a Cowboy going forward, I would take Pickens. I would take the years. But I don't think he's a Cowboy long term. And I think he is the perfect type of example of a player who can Kenny Golladay. Kenny Golladay was awesome. Kenny Golladay was, a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football, and then went out and got the bag because he had such a great season. But he took a bag on a team that wasn't that good, and those teams, they're going to overpay, which means those types of players are going to go take that money. And Kenny Golladay went away quickly.
Giants,
and
right?
Yeah. And so I could see a world like that happening for him. So that's where I'm like, I hope the Cowboys need to just franchise him, because I don't think they're going to sign him long term. I don't think they have the money to do that. And so just franchise him. That's not good for him, but it's good for us.
It's good for us. It's all that matters. I was thinking, and I don't know their cap situation off the top of my head, but it's like now they're going to have to pay Quinn and Williams and pick up that whole thing. But it's like, man, Jerry, just please once, do whatever you can early in this process and not franchise tag him, and then in 2 years test the market and then pay him as the 9th most highest paid wide receiver, which feels like he's going to do. I feel like they could maybe get him for, Jameson-ish type money. They're going to push this thing to the max, and he's going to want money. So yeah, I do agree. I want him back in Dallas. That would be great for his dynasty value. I think with those uncertainty situational factors, I would lean Nico, but man, George, the talent with George is so tantalizing, especially after what we just saw on Monday night.
I have George in a rebuild, and there's been a couple of times where people have approached me trying to trade for him, and I've just kind of held on, thinking I guess maybe he'll get the big contract. But I felt like it's one of those decisions where just because you're rebuilding doesn't mean you trade away your assets if it's a young wide receiver. You don't just automatically punt him away in hopes to get somebody that could be George Pickens in the draft. Because that's really all you're doing with picks. Is I hope that maybe I get somebody like George Pickens one day in these picks. So I've held on, and he helped me win a week, which I didn't want to.
Just for context, I looked it up on Spotrac. They are currently, and this will change as the offseason comes, they're currently 5th in available cap space for next season.
So that means Jerry's just going to pay Javonte. That's what I heard.
That's exactly what he's going to do.
Yeah. All right, let me throw out a running back who had 2 touchdowns this past week, Travis Etienne Jr. He's been good and steady for lineups. I have him in a league, and it's been great to count on him. But Bhayshul Tuten went 15 for 74 and 1 before leaving that injury. He was out carrying Etienne and out snapping him in the first half. So my regress or impress conversation is about both of these running backs and what do you do with them? Because I think we were waiting for one of them to kind of win out over the other before the season. Or, hey, they brought in Tuten as their guy. This regime did. This is their dude. And yet it seems like they really trust Etienne, but Etienne's in the final year under contract. How do you see this shaking out the rest of the year? And then beyond this year, how are you approaching these 2 running backs in Dynasty? So, Jason, do you still have Etienne in the main Ballers Dynasty League?
So I was bringing this up today before the show. Really certainly not as a flex. This was as a lamentation. I was a little sad to realize and to know that our main league of record and our Dynasty League, I am relying on Travis Etienne and Chris Olave. They're my flex. They're we're in double flex league, so they're my double flex, and that's not too bad. But I don't feel like when I look at those guys,
that's
I'm
not going to win you the league.
It doesn't feel like it, man. It sure doesn't. Etienne, we already know he can regress. We saw him as, a top 5. I think he was the running back 3 on a season. And then the following year, he didn't get all the touchdowns and it didn't work out. And when I've watched this season, it's been back and forth. There have been games where he looks efficient, especially in the receiving game. There have been a lot of games where it appears he is the guy. Even after Tuten had some good games, they went back to Etienne and did more work. I think it will continue to remain a 60-40 split in Etienne's favor, but Etienne feels very touchdown dependent, and I'm not going to bank on Jaguars touchdowns to Etienne for my season. So if I have to choose regress or impress, I would say he's impressing and he's going to regress again.
The schedule.
I watch Etienne and I don't look on my lineup and go like, dude, I've got him locked in. I mean, right now Travis Etienne is the running back 13 on the season, coming off 3 back-to-back games in the top 12, and I'm like, can I start him? I'm still there.
Next 3 matchups. Well, next 4 actually. Cardinals, Titans, Colts.
Yes.
Jets leading into the fantasy playoffs.
I mean, that's fantastic. And then if indeed the Colts are a good matchup, they get them again in the championship. Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm wrong.
And the thing that's interesting about like the short-term outlook for the next couple of weeks is we may not know the answer to this question of if Tuten was in the middle of not a takeover, because I think Etienne will still have a role regardless, but before Bhayshul Tuten left with injury last week with an ankle injury, he was actually out carrying Travis Etienne. Now you have Tuten banged up, so presumably Etienne will be the lead back for the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure if that was happening or if Tuten was just running hot and they were letting him go, or what the situation was.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
I really don't think this was a concerted effort to make a changeover in who the lead back was. Tuten was doing great. Mm-hmm. He was really, I mean, he in that game, he was just tearing them up and then just like keep giving them the ball. And I think it was good coaching. And we've seen them do that exact same thing in reverse when it was Etienne who was running well and running hot and just say, hey, this is a team that will go hot hand. And if either one of them were to, this was Liam Cohen last year, right? Like they gave more and more opportunity to Bucky Irving when he's like, man, he's just running so hot. We got to keep giving him more work. And then Bucky just took it. I guess in this situation, I don't think either one of these running backs, while both are good, neither is going to be good enough to just take it, to just be like, okay, you're the guy. This is a workhorse bell cow role now because we can't take you off the field. I think this is a team that's going to benefit from having both of them involved.
Do you guys approach Tuten as he's the starting running back next year? I know he's a 4th-round pick. He feels a little different than Woody Marks.
He feels a little different. I don't view him as he's the starter next year. No, I view him as if they lose Etienne, which they very, very well might. If they do, then I think they will bring another back in and have a committee.
Okay.
I don't view him as Woody. Like Woody, I see as like a disappearing act. Like I expect Woody to go away. I don't see Tuten going away, but I don't see Tuten taking a leap to become the dude.
I think I agree with that. I was going to ask you guys on Etienne, what do you think his market will be in free agency? Because the free agent class this year is, for the most part, pretty weak. Like Najee coming off the Achilles, Eckler coming off the Achilles, and obviously older. We've got Javonte, who had a resurgence this year in Dallas. Rico, we'll see on him. He'll be 28 in the offseason. Ken Walker, J.K. Dobbins not coming off injury, and Breece Hall are kind of the big names with Etienne. Like, I could see a team, if it's not the Jaguars, throwing him, a 2-year deal, something like that, and giving him a lead role. So I feel like I'm a little hesitant on him overall, but I don't think he's a player in Dynasty who, even after an incredible season this year, will just kind of like poof and be one of those guys that you held onto the bag with. I will think there will be an increase in his value next year because of free agency.
Do you think he gets something like what Devin Singletary got a couple years ago, where it's like, it was a 3-year deal, really just a 2-1, but it's like he got to be the lead guy. I know it hasn't worked out that way, but for a running back in free agency, that was a big deal. The type of money he got and the role at first. I don't think we're saying Etienne's going to be a starting running back in the NFL for another 3 years, but could he get something like that? I think it was 3 years, $21 million for Singletary.
Yeah, something like that.
I think that that amount of money and time makes sense. It's just a matter of whether a team views that as it wasn't like people were now we're so invested in Singletary that we have to give him everything. The Jaguars have been invested in Etienne. It was a first-round draft pick. That's worth, way more than a contract like that. So I think that he will be at least second, obviously, behind Breece Hall in the marketplace, and up to fourth or maybe fifth, because I think Rico, what he's doing, if he stays hot the rest of the year, is going to actually have a market. Ken Walker, I believe, will have a bigger market than Etienne. Even though Etienne might have more production this year, other GMs might look around and say, I don't like how they're utilizing Ken Walker. I don't like the play style of Ken Walker for that team, but I love him for mine. I don't know that you could use Etienne much better than the Jags have used him through his career. And you go it just seems like he's okay. He's a solid player, but he's not that dude. So I would put him behind a couple of those guys. And then the real wild card is going to be Javonte.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more bullish on Tuten and his role moving forward. Like, it wouldn't shock me if next year he's the lead in a 60-40 split for this team, just based on how this regime picked him, talked about him, and I think on a per touch basis, he looks like an NFL running back that can break tackles at an alarmingly high rate. That was his thing, right, at Virginia Tech.
Yeah. He has definitely passed the eyeball test. He looks like he has juice. Very, very difficult to want to tackle.
We still have running backs like this, and we're talking about all the scenarios. We still have the rest of the season. So what happens there? Injuries, something like that. The off season of where does Etienne sign in March? Does Tuten survive that? Then does Tuten survive the NFL draft? There's another 4 or 5 hurdles, but I'm approaching it now as if I think Tuten will at least be the lead back this next year. Let's take a break. We'll talk about a few more names. All right, I'm going to bring up a tight end that I think is a really fun dynasty name to bring up. It's A.J. Barner of the Seattle Seahawks. He had 11 targets this past week. He played 14 of the first 15 snaps on the field. And this is a cool stat I found from Anthony Reinard. He started every single drive. He was out on the field on the first snap of every single drive, meaning the way that the Seahawks kind of approach their sets, they use a lot of 2 tight ends. So he's going to be on the field a lot, but they think of him as more than just, this is a big dude. He had a touchdown streak at the end of last year where he made some noise, and then they draft Elijah Arroyo, and you're like, okay, I guess they don't view him as the guy. He's been clearly ahead of Arroyo for a while in the pecking order, and the Seahawks, they use 2 tight ends on 42% of their dropbacks. That's 5th highest in the NFL, and they lead the entire league in passing yards when 2 tight ends are on the field. He's a huge target, 6'5". He's one of those players that could luck box his way into, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns in a season just for the way that he's used, and he's big around the red zone. He's an interesting name because I would have thought Arroyo would be the tight end I want in Dynasty the rest of the way. Do you guys feel that way?
From the Seahawks, you mean?
Yes, from the Seahawks.
I would have felt that way. I still might. I think right now I'd put A.J. Barner ahead, but it's close. And whether we're talking about, if we're talking about that level, I'm not quite as bullish into what happened this last week. Right now, going forward, say this week against Tennessee, A.J. Barner looks like a guy, maybe they talked him up. He got 11 targets. Maybe you could throw him the ball more. Maybe he does get more involved. We could see the avenue for that, the pathway, but this, you talked about the snaps, right? He was on the field on every first down drive. He played 87% of the snaps, 11 targets, 10 for 70. Those numbers are awesome. But also he played 84% of the snaps 3 weeks ago, and he was 3 for 24. He played 86% of the snaps the game before that. He was 1 for 7. He played 89% of the snaps and was 2 for 26. He played 85% of the snaps and had 1 for 0. I don't think that there is true value here. He's young. He had a bunch of targets in a game. And, also they brought in Shaheed, which they need more targets here. I'm probably mostly out on the tight ends in Seattle from a true value and dynasty perspective.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think he's a guy, like, if you picked him off waivers, which I've got him in a couple places just because there was a little buzz, like, beginning of training camp, and I was like, what the heck, I'll add him and let's just see what happens. If that was you and you now have him on your bench, like, this is like a perfect tight end 2, 3 for your squad that, hey, if there's an injury, a bye week, a good matchup coming up, you can plug him in and kind of hope. But I would be very surprised if Barner turns into an every week top 12 type of guy. Like, he's part of the bucket of tight end 14 to 24 that could go 2 for 22 any week, but maybe could pop up for 4 catches and a touchdown. Like, it's the same kind of group, right? So I'm with you. I don't know that there's, certainly his value compared to last year has increased, but I don't know if there's like a huge ceiling outcome here.
Yeah, I think it's a system issue. This is a team that wants to run the ball a lot. They keep giving it to Sharps over and over and over and over for a yard or two, and they're fine with that. And they're genuinely fine. Of course, they'd love to have, every play be 10 yards or more, but that's kind of the ball that they're playing with a defensive head coach and a good defense in tow. Sam Darnold at center. They're going to put a lot of tight ends on the field, and they're going to slowly try to just beat you down. And so, yeah, can he go out there and have 70 yards in a game? Absolutely. But I don't ever think that will be the norm.
He's a interesting player because over the last month, he has 6 rush attempts. So, like, there's a lot of these, we saw that Mark Andrews touchdown this past week, but there's a lot of, like, usage plays where, like, he had a a rushing touchdown a couple weeks ago. So I think he's a fun player, but I was looking at the dynasty landscape of tight end in that range you were mentioning, Betz, around, let's just say, tight end 15. And there's the changing of the guard for some of these older tight ends like David Njoku or TJ Hawkinson. Travis Kelce's about to... Yeah, Hawkinson's just off the planet.
Hawkinson has, talk about a fall from grace. This guy, even coming into this year, his value was super high. He might have been the tight end 4 or 5 coming off of this injury. You figure last year was an injury thing, and he is on the field 85, 90% of the snaps all year. He's the tight end 25. He's worthless.
Yeah, and to even think about starting him, like, you can't even convince yourself with McCarthy right now you're barely convincing yourself to start Jefferson, much less Hawkinson. But
yeah, AJ Barner has 2 games over 70 yards. Right now, on the course of the season, there is one. He doesn't have a single game over hitting 50 yards for Hawkinson.
Should we just check him into the old folks' home, just like early retirement?
It does
take away
feel
the keys?
early. He's only 28 for a tight end. Betz, is it possible this is an injury? Like, he's going to need 2 years from his injury or the timeline, and he's just going to be so much better next year?
No,
because Hawkinson was a dude.
I was going to say, and he was actually pretty efficient last year, considering coming off the ACL. So I don't think this is injury related. I'm just kind of looking at some of his peripherals from last year. This year he's 0.92 yards per run, which is worse than Mason Taylor. Which, come on. And last year he was at 1.56, 1.89 the year before that. So it's not an injury thing, in my opinion. Like, he was more efficient last year than he is this year. And last year, he was coming off ACL and missing all of camp.
There's no way you convince me he's 28.
He does
not feel that way.
He looks like he's your age,
32 minimum.
He's my age, 38. He's struggling out there. It's a struggle just to get a couple of catches. But I just wanted to point that out, that tight end, there is a changing of the guards. So some of these younger guys we'll probably see over the next year or two. Like, Theo Johnson's another fun name that athletically he's getting an opportunity right now. Just a lot of names like that. All right, one more name on Regress. Oh, Gadsden, baby. I had him as tight end 8 in a startup, and I'm wondering if I'm going to look back in like February, March, go, that was too low. He should be tight end 5.
Mm-hmm. I could see it.
So, all right, one more name, and it is Packers wide receiver Christian Watson, who went 4 for 46 and 2 this past week. He had the most snaps on the team, 43 snaps, 24 routes. It seems like they trust him the most, but I know the story of Christian Watson. When you start to buy in and when you think, oh, this guy, he's electric. He just disappears. I think the question I want to ask is with him and with Golden, what's the plan here? Romeo Doubs will be a free agent after this season. Christian Watson signed a 1-year extension. He'll be a free agent in 2027. So how are you approaching those two? Matthew Golden, who for some reason they took him in the first round, and Christian Watson. How are you differentiating between those two moving forward?
Dude, this is weird. Like the Golden season, the seas parted for him, right? Like Jaden Reed out for basically the entire season. Christian Watson coming off ACL surgery in January, I believe it was. So we knew he wasn't going to be ready. Kraft goes down. Like this couldn't have been a better opportunity for him.
It turns out
done nothing.
He is who he thought he was. I mean, he's a 3rd round NFL pick.
Do you guys
That's what he was.
The Christian Watson extension had anything to do with what they've seen from Matthew Golden in the first?
No, I don't at all. I think it was, I don't believe that. I think that the Christian Watson thing was they like Christian Watson. They like the skill set that he brings that is different for their team. And they knew that he was going to come back at some point this year from the injury, and they don't want just to wait through his rehab and then have him come and show off for someone else. I think it was a pretty smart, wise decision. It was short, right? Was it just like a year,
1 year
they added or something?
Yeah, they pushed it forward a year. Yeah.
So I think that was good. I'm sure they might have some regrets on Golden. But yeah, Matthew Golden, it makes me upset because I was so anti-Matthew Golden. Like, I just could not wrap my head around how people were giving him first-round buzz, and then that he went in the first round, and then everything parted for him, and by the time that the season started, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to draft some Matthew Golden, and I got a couple of shares because I'm still going to take – I don't care if I don't like a guy. He's a first-round NFL pick for a good offense that needs wide receivers, so I took him league of record. Most important league on the planet. I'm sitting there, and I am eyeing my guy, Emeka Egbuka, in whatever round it was, and we're just sitting there ready, waiting to draft him. 3 picks ahead of us, Andy drafts my guy, Emeka Egbuka, and then I have to wait, and 3 picks later draft Golden, who he liked, and I'm like, you took my guy, and now I've got to have the other rookie first-round wide receiver leftovers. And then you go forward, and I'm like, oh, that was a bigger deal than I thought. One of these guys is awesome.
I want you to know, Jason, that pick in the League of Record draft of Egbuka, I have thought about maybe more than any other pick of that entire draft, because we took a different wide receiver who I'll not name 2 picks before, and Mike and I almost went toe-to-toe about it.
You got to tell us.
So you guys almost took Egbuka ahead of Andy, and then Andy took him ahead of me?
Yes, I legitimately... this isn't a dunk, but I've literally messaged it to Mike 38 times this year. I said, I think about this.
Who was it?
It was Cortland Sutton.
Oh, yeah, okay. Hey.
I hate it because I hate Cortland Sutton.
At least it wasn't Matthew Golden.
That's true. That's I would never
imagine. I think so. Romeo Doubs is a free agent after this year. I can't imagine his market will be massive, but I will say if they bring back Doubs, I think it tells you a lot about like the overall confidence they have in Golden moving forward. Because the way that they have built their team, and this has kind of been true for the last 3-4 years with LaFleur, is like since Devontae left, they kind of have had different archetypes of downfield speed guys, a possession receiver, kind of a gadgety yards after the catch, manufactured touches guy in Jaden Reed. Like they've kind of mixed and matched, which I think they've done a really good job with. But at some point, you need to be so good that they can't take you off the field. And I feel like a lot has to go right over the next, 6-7 weeks for that to happen for Matthew Golden. I would just be surprised. So yeah, we were lower on him kind of coming into the season, and anything can happen and can change with players, but it's been really, really disappointing.
Yeah, it's a good segue as we finish. When we go through the prospecting season, which we get to do, when the calendar turns to 2026, we bring up all these stats every single year of what's sticky, what's not. And it's kind of been a very high hit rate. And I'm talking like 75%. If you cannot earn targets in college, it doesn't happen. Like I'm looking at the list right in front of me. Terry McLaurin is literally the only wide receiver who flipped the script from college to the NFL. And he was like a punt return specialist at Ohio State. But the list of first round wide receivers that were taken too high because their big playability are a couple games. Henry Ruggs, Philip Dorsett, Matthew Golden. It's pretty bad, the group that he's like around, and the group that and that's just one stat, but like those are the type of things that I just think about and we bring up on the show all the time. Not to say we're going to be right. Some of them are going to be completely wrong, but more often than not, it's just hard. Now, maybe they have a plan. Maybe they have a plan for Matthew Golden. Who knows? Next week, special Thanksgiving episode, Betz and I are going to be giving a way too early look at the 2026 class. So just bringing up some of the names to talk about for your rookie drafts and off-season prospecting. So that should be good. Make sure you go to thefantasyfootballers.com, check out our trade analyzer. You can optimize your lineups. And we'll talk to you next week. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.